and welcome to day 2 of Eurosport's unique coverage of the third round of the Formula One World Championship, the San Marino Grand Prix. Ahead of us, the final period of official practice on our build-up to the big race. I say practice, but the spectator areas here are almost packed to capacity. Motor racing, in particular Ferrari racing, is almost a religion to these people, and their enthusiasm adds another element to a unique atmosphere at this, the first race of the European season. With me is John Watson. John, what were your impressions of the first day?
Matt, I think there were 3 things stood out. First was Gerhard Berger out-Senna-ing Ayrton Senna to take provisional pole position. Riccardo Patrese in the Williams, and that car now really looks very competitive indeed. And finally, Martin Donnelly, a superb 12th place in the Lotus Lamborghini.
Well, coming up, we have the battle for pole position and all the news from the pit lane. And joining us later will be Dr. Harvey Postlethwaite, designer of the sensational-looking new Tyrrell, on the effects of aerodynamics on the new Formula One cars. But first, here's Andrew with the highlights of the first day.
Thanks, Matthew. Yes, day 1 saw the Imola track near Bologna absolutely buzzing with anticipation. The fans may have been cheering for Ferrari, but it was McLaren who set the pace. Ayrton Senna has made pole position his own domain here over the past few years, but Gerhard Berger had other ideas. He stormed round in a blistering 1 minute 24.027, a staggering 2 seconds under last year's pole-setting time to snatch the #1 spot from Senna by fractions. For Ferrari, in front of a partisan home crowd, it was a less happy day. Alain Prost could only manage 4th fastest, while Nigel Mansell had a very torrid time. While on his quick lap, this happened. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted Paolo Barilla's Minardi charging across the grass with the Ferrari as his target. Only split-second reactions on Nigel's behalf prevented a major disaster. Barilla got away with that, but his teammate, local man Pierluigi Martini, was less fortunate. He lost control at the Acqua Minerale and slammed into the tyre wall. The front of the car was viciously severed from the machine, but Martini, amazingly, escaped with no more than a chipped ankle. He hopes to return to racing at Monaco. He wasn't the only one to collide with the scenery. Take a wild ride now with Alessandro Nannini as he passes De Cesaris and loses it. Nannini was uninjured in that incident. A happier time for Williams, though. They go into the final qualifying session with Patrese 3rd and Boutsen 5th, and will look to keep the McLarens honest.
Well, car design is very much on people's minds here at Imola with the new 1990 regulations coming into force. Of all the cars making their debuts at the San Marino Grand Prix, perhaps the most spectacular is the Tyrrell with its flying front wing. Earlier, Andrew Marriott spoke to the car's creator, Dr. Harvey Postlethwaite.
Well, Harvey Postlethwaite, you're responsible for the most incredible new shape in Formula One, this dihedral wing, do you call it?
Well, it's either dihedral or anhedral. It depends which way you think it's pushing. But yes, I think we would call it dihedral.
What's this wing actually do?
Well, it's not just the wing, Andy. It's really the whole car, because if you look back, you'll see the whole of the front of the monocoque is raised up as if to invite air to pass underneath the car, which is somewhat different to the normal racing car, where the nose would seem to want to tip air over the top of the car. And by getting the air to go underneath and to flow round and under the side pods, making that air go very fast, we can create a much greater suction and sucking the car onto the ground, and therefore make it go around the corners quicker.
This whole idea of aerodynamics really has only been developed in the last 20 years. And, just explain how it came about and what these wings... We've got a rear wing down here at our feet.
Yes.
We'll take a look at that in a second. How did the principle start?
Well, really, I think you said 20 years. I mean, yes, aerodynamics will always be around. You can't make the air go away. But the realization that if you could push the car harder onto the ground, and that coupled with these great big black sticky tyres that we use, if you can make the car go around all the corners very quickly by sucking it and pushing it down onto the ground, then your gain in terms of lap time is much, much greater than just making it go quickly down the straights. But I think the other area where in the last couple of years, we've seen a big improvement is also understanding and simulating this so accurately in wind tunnels that we can also predict how the car will handle. Now, it's one thing to give it a very good envelope of performance, but it's another thing within that envelope to make it handle just the way the driver wants it to. And it's really the very sophisticated use of wind tunnels that's enabled us to make a car which really works when you first time you put it on the track.
Are they similar wing sections to an aircraft?
Well, they were. When I say they were, the first wings that we designed to put on racing cars were all developed from the landing configuration of aircraft wings. But we now really, I think, have gone way beyond that. This wing, if I can show you this wing in a little more detail, this is a three-element wing, sits on the back of the car, and it's designed not only to push the car onto the ground, but it's also designed so that the interaction between the three elements helps to pull air out from underneath the car, and this again helps to create this famous ground effect. I think one of the most interesting facts about the amount of downforce we can produce on these cars, to give your listeners or your viewers some idea of just how big it is that our next race is at Monte Carlo. Well, if you thought of a Formula One car going through the tunnel at Monte Carlo, as it went through the tunnel, if it were possible, it could actually go through on the roof, because there is so much downforce pushing it down that if it actually turned upside down, that equivalent force upwards would actually make it stick to the roof as it went through the tunnel. In other words, it's greater than the weight of the car at that speed.
Obviously, you've got all this downforce. That must affect the speed on the straight. So it's all a big compromise, presumably.
Yes, it is. Obviously, where there aren't long straights, we will run what we call less wing, less downforce. Circuits like Monte Carlo, we'd run the very biggest wings we can put on the car because we need all the downforce we can get to go around all those little corners. The problems arise when we come to a circuit like Imola, where there aren't very many fast corners. Quite a lot of the corners here are slow, but there is one very long straight. Now that becomes very, very difficult to find the right compromise, and it's something we pay quite a lot of attention to in the day's testing that we've been doing here before the Grand Prix.
Obviously, this rear wing is a vital component. Once in a while they do fall off. What happens then?
Well, clearly we try and avoid that circumstance as hard as we can, because it can end up in a very, very severe accident. The stability of the car is immediately affected adversely, and the car, even on the straight, is almost certain to go out of control.
And you're one of these technical boffins that's really spoiling motor racing, because these things don't slide about anymore. If you had a completely free hand and wanted to design a racing car that was exciting to watch for the spectators, would you do it all differently?
Absolutely not. To me, these are absolutely superb, functional the way they are, and I think the racing of these cars provides the best spectacle in the world.
In a moment, we'll be able to take a look at how the final practice session finished up. But first of all, let's have a look at how untimed practice went earlier this morning. Fastest was Riccardo Patrese in the Williams. He was just ahead of Ayrton Senna in the McLaren, and third, a terrific drive from Jean Alesi in the new Tyrrell. Thierry Boutsen took fourth place for Williams. Gerhard Berger was fifth in the Marlboro McLaren. Nigel Mansell was sixth fastest in the Ferrari, ahead of Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton Ford. Alain Prost is in eighth place, Nelson Piquet ninth, and finally Derek Warwick 10th in the new Lotus. Well, now we're all set for the final qualifying session. Join us in a couple of moments when we find out who'll take pole position for the San Marino Grand Prix. Welcome back to Imola, where the final qualifying session has already started, so let's get straight out to the action on the track with John Watson and Andrew Marriott.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. Jean Alesi now out on his qualifying run. The talented Frenchman has moved back to his native Avignon from Oxford, where he lived for the last couple of years. And this looks like a quick lap. John Watson, is he on the qualifiers?
Yes, indeed he is. He's got two sets of qualifiers, and he's going to go out and try and make the best use of those tyres. Qualifying tyres really are only good for about one fast lap. At the end of the day, you can combine the two sets and maybe make a third run. But generally speaking, by the time the tyres have had a run, they're more or less finished.
What do you make of that new wing that we saw Harvey Postlethwaite talking about, that new dihedral front wing, they call it? I think when we first saw it in the press when the car was announced, John, we thought it wouldn't stay on the car for this race, but it really is working as he goes through the chicane there.
Yes, it does work. In fact, I thought it was an April Fool's joke rather late in April, but it was so different to anything else we've seen on a racing car. And for Tyrrell to come out with something really revolutionary like this at this particular part of the year really did catch people off guard.
Well, of course, we saw the six-wheel Tyrrell, but that was a very long time ago. Now that plunging downhill section, and what a vast crowd here today for qualifying. The place is absolutely packed, and as this guy's parents were Italian, maybe they're going to adopt him.
Well, I think so, and Lacey is a pretty Italian name, and although he is French by birth, he looks sort of Italian. He's got that sort of swarthy look about him, and the Italian race fans love racing drivers who drive racing cars aggressively, and Jean Lacey has got that form of controlled aggression that really makes him extremely exciting.
Let's look at his time, 1:25.230. Jean Lacey goes fifth. Fifth for Lacey. Good show from him.
In fact, the time's a little bit slower than he did 2 weeks ago in testing, but on the day, it's good enough.
Now Gerhard Berger on the provisional pole. He'll be battling hard to stay ahead, of course, of his teammate Ayrton Senna. Ayrton Senna has been on the pole for the San Marino Grand Prix for the past 3 years. Is he going to get knocked off it? Currently, this man is in front of him by just a fraction. Just take us through the lap. Driving cleanly, John.
Yes, he is. He was always up the curb. He has been sliding up the curbs a little bit on this lap, but generally speaking, it's not been too bad. Having Ayrton Senna as your teammate does give you something to go for, and Berger has responded very well to the change of team. McLaren being quite a different home for him than that of Ferrari for the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, there he is. See the Austrian colours on the side of his helmet as he kicks up a little bit of dust using all the track and, of course, the runoff areas as well. Does that sort of throw the car offline? Doesn't appear to, John.
It deviates the car slightly. You're losing hundredths of seconds, and all those hundredths add up into tenths and tenths into seconds. And by driving a clean lap aggressively in controlled form, will be quicker than sliding around as we've seen Gerhard.
Let's look at the monitor. Time coming up, 1:23.781. He has gone quicker. Berger has clipped 0.3 of a second of yesterday's time. So Senna will really have his work cut out now. This is Nannini. Nannini in the new style Benetton. And this is Senna. Senna now trying to recapture the pole, going on to his qualifying lap now.
Yep, he came onto the pit straight. He came on quite slowly, but doing so, getting the power down and really trying to force the car, thrust the car out of that slow second gear chicane, and then maximize on the speed down through the Tamburello, coming into the Villeneuve curve, and then hard on the brakes into the Tossa curve. This second gear corner, getting the car in and feeding the power in as quickly really as he can. You see the car squirreling a little bit on the track, a little bit too much of the 700 horsepower Honda have available for their drivers today. But look, he's good. You see, this is not going to be a particularly good lap. He's already using too much of the curb. He's been sliding a little bit in the Tossa, getting across the curb, sliding there in the Acqua Minerale. Let's see, look, again.
Quite wide there, Johnny. He's up on the curb.
Every corner he's been on so far, he's overdriven the car. He's trying, at this point, too hard. I know it's easy sitting here commentating on it to say that, but he needs to control what he's doing a little bit more. That's wasting time. He's losing time. He's abusing the tires, abusing the car, and actually going to go slightly slower than he would think he is capable of doing.
Yeah, coming towards the end of that lap now.
A bit tidier through that Ravazza corner. He got it back under control, but I think those 4 corners where he was sliding too much will pay in the lap time you're going to see just in about 2 seconds.
Yeah, we see him across the line. Just takes a couple of seconds to come up on the timing monitor. There it is, 1:24.079, exactly the same time as he did yesterday, to the 1,000th of a second. Absolutely amazing, but he is still in second place, albeit on the front row of the grid. So that's Ayrton Senna for you.
But he'll be driving now. This slowing down lap, he'll be thinking about it. What did I do wrong?
Oh, there's one off. Derek Warwick running away from the car, mainly because he wants to get into the spare. He stuck it in the sand, and Derek Warwick, I know he's a bit happier with the car after this morning's practice session and hoping to move up the grid, but that's not a happy sight. And now we join in car with Ivan Capelli. The Leighton House team had an absolutely horrible start to the season, but getting it together a bit better here. And while we just talk about that car, let's say get well soon to Ian Phillips, the team director. He's had a touch of meningitis, I believe. So, Ian, if you're listening, let's hope you're back at the racetrack at Monaco.
Capelli coming down now to the second gear. Chicane just before the pit straight. Very tight left and right. Difficult getting the power on. Third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. You see his hand stays on the gear lever for those 3 gear changes. The car accelerates so quickly, it's not worth taking your hand off the gear lever. Sixth gear, flat out through Tamburello. Getting up to 185, 190 miles an hour. Coming down through the Villeneuve curve, and really you're just into the curve when you've got to get off the brakes.
More problems for Camel Lotus. Martin Donnelly in trouble. Can't see what's happened there.
Well, that looks like a mechanical failure or electrical failure or something. Great shame, because Martin Donnelly has been going extremely well here in his 3rd Grand Prix for Lotus Lamborghini.
Here's a man who is sliding the car, Thierry Boutsen, hoping to get up at least onto the 2nd row of the grid. This is Thierry on his 2nd qualifying run. Remember, Ayrton Senna still has a run to come.
Boutsen had some problems this morning, Andrew. He was complaining about brakes, and of course brakes are very important on the Imola circuit. You've got 3 or 4 places where you really have to get on the brakes heavily, so they managed to cure that, and we're going to see what Boutsen, if he can make up for some of the lack of braking in the morning in this afternoon's time session. The session, of course, that really counts for the grid.
There's Boutsen. Boutsen goes fourth. Boutsen onto the 2nd row of the grid with a 1 minute 25.039. Thierry Boutsen has gone fourth. Now he's slowing down. And Senna again. Senna goes out for his 2nd run. Well, it's this time or never, John, and car's in the way too.
Well, he's got De Cesaris in front of him, and he's got John Alesi behind him, but I don't think Alesi's going to be a problem, though he will try and hang in there and grab the slipstream as much as possible. Remember that Alesi's Ford engine, the V8 Ford engine, has got about 60 horsepower less than Senna's Honda engine, so he's going to try and maximize as much as he can on the slipstream that Honda is going to provide him with, but of course the power will tell. Going uphill into the double left-hander.
Yes, in that previous run you said that Senna was perhaps overdriving the car a little bit. Now it looks as if it's much smoother on this run.
Yes, I would say now you're seeing controlled force here being used. Senna appears not to be putting the energy into the car in the wrong way. The car now is being pushed out of the corners. It's positive rather than what we saw in the previous qualifying lap, what I would call negative driving. This is very positive.
Looks like a quick one. Just about 58 seconds under that bridge on our stopwatch, and we know that's going to be a quick one if he gets there that soon.
Anything under a minute at the bridge is very, very fast indeed. Now it's much, much more settled. The car looks right. He looks totally in control of the situation, and I think we're going to see a very, very fast lap from Senna.
But Alesi's kept up remarkably well. Look at that. Alesi across, coming up on the timing screen now. Senna 1 minute 23.220. Senna snatches the pole from Gerhard Berger, the 44th pole in his career. Fantastic.
And he's going to be very happy, Ayrton Senna. That was a superb lap. I mean, really, as a driver watching that, it's a pleasure to see another driver drive a clean, positive, aggressive lap.
Well, Nigel Mansell, look into his eyes. He's still got a run to do. Can the Ferraris get at least onto the 2nd row of the grid? They're in the 3rd row at the moment.
Alan Prost on a run-in.
Well, there's Prost, that superb drive, of course, in Brazil. And his 2nd drive for Ferrari garnered a victory. What sort of times Alan Prost going to make? Prost coming towards the timing light now. There he goes, Prost. Not much improvement. Prost has improved. That's good enough. The 6th spot. 25.179 to Alan Prost.
Nigel Mansell now, he's going to try and get a clean lap. He's had a lot of problems throughout the weekend, particularly with traffic, and 1 or 2 cars in particular have been a real pain. So let's hope Nigel can get a clean run, because basically I think he is quicker than Prost. Prost is a superb race driver, tactician, politician, linguist, but Nigel's a great racing driver, and he is fast.
Yes, they say Nigel's Italian hasn't improved much further than the spaghetti carbonara stage.
It's always a start, Andrew, but I think working in an Italian team with a driver who does speak the language fluently, such as Prost, must put Nigel at this stage at a disadvantage, especially since Prost has won a race and Nigel hasn't. So he wants very, very much indeed to reassert his position in the team. Last year, really, he was the unofficial #1. He eclipsed Berger, but right now, Prost is doing to Mansell what Mansell did to Berger.
We just saw a shot of all the vines which are around here. Now he's coming up behind Terry Boutsen. Whoa,
Oh,
off
dear
he
me.
goes.
Oh dear, I mean, the bottom of that car got a right hiding. I mean, really, I'm not quite sure if Boutsen did get in his way. He seemed to be on a part of the track that did interfere with Nigel. He was wanting to get out of that corner quickly, but it seemed to affect Nigel. He's missed a gear, the electronic gear change. He's got to go down through the gears. He can't select the gear he wants, and of course, he's spoiled that lap. He's going to have to now cruise back and try and start another lap and hopefully try and improve upon the time he's just had from Friday.
Yeah, well, in fact, this is his second run, John. His first run, he moved up to 5th spot, so he remains in 5th at the moment, but the third row of the grid is not what the Ferrari fans, the Tifosi, want this time. We see it again.
He clipped the curb on the inside of the right-hand part of the chicane. I'm not so much sure if Boutsen, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but Nigel looked like he was sort of slightly out of control before he got there, and of course, going across the curb like that, all 4 wheels were right off the ground. The bottom of the car was scraping along the ground. That car will need some carbon fibre surgery tonight, that's for sure.
Now Mansell still going. Probably a little angry under that Union Jack crash helmet. Sparks flying out.
Oh, dear me.
Straight onto the chicane.
There's a major misjudgment. He came down, didn't get his braking right, and did the right thing, of course. He went across that little pathway that has been worn by other cars doing the same thing, but of course that lap will not be allowed. He took a shortcut, so this lap will not count no matter what the time is.
How the timekeepers know that? Report presumably from the Marshal's post.
Well, the Marshal's post, of course, the circuit is covered in cameras, so they will be able to monitor exactly what has taken place, and this lap will be deleted from Mansell's total of practice laps. But that just gives you an indication as to how hard Nigel was trying, and he left his braking ever so late. Made the right decision not to attempt the chicane, because he would have certainly damaged the car. He went across the grass, but of course that lap's been wasted. And the tyres, the qualifying tyres, that means they've got one life less than they would have had he not made that misjudgment.
Just off screen, John, we've seen that Riccardo Patresi's gone a fraction faster, but stays in 3rd spot.
There we go. He chose to go straight on really quite early at that situation. He knew he was never going to get round there. So really frustrating day for Nigel Mansell and Ferrari, and I think that he is capable of getting into the 24s, but he's been denied it.
Just the closing minutes of practice now. We go in car with Nelson Piquet. Just remind us of those gear change points, John.
Yes, 3rd gear, changing into 4th gear, holding 4th gear on the second part of the Ravazza, snatching 5th, holding 5th all the way down to the first right, left of the Marlboro chicane, then hard on the brakes, down to 2nd gear in a 6-speed gearbox. Left, right, down on the power, hands flurrying up to 3rd gear, 4th gear, 5th gear. The gear changes are so quick, it's not really worth taking your hand off the wheel.
Piquet 25.7, that's 8th spot for him. Gerhard Berger back on the track for his 2nd qualifying run, and he will be working really hard to try and recapture the pole. Can he do it? Coming towards the end of this lap, in fact.
Well, he was sliding a lot coming onto the straight out of the Ravazza corner at start, for whether the tyres really have had the performance left in them after that hard run.
24.2, no quicker. Gerhard Berger has to be content with 2nd spot. Okay, the checkered flag coming out, and that is the end of the session. Ayrton Senna takes his 44th career pole. Let's look at the times then. Senna and Berger on the front row of the grid. On row 2, it's all Williams, Patrese and Boutsen. On row 3, Mansell and Prost, all Ferrari. Then Jean Alesi, Nelson Piquet, Nannini and Warwick round out the top 10. Martin Donnelly, a great 11th. Mauricio Gugelmin right up to 12th spot. Bernard is 13th. Stefano Modena 14th. Suzuki 15th. Then it's Alio in 16th spot, to Cesaris 17th, and another Italian, Capelli 18th. In 19th spot it's Nakajima, 20th is Lorini, and then Emanuele Pirro. Oliver Gruillard, Gregor Foytet, Roberto Moreno, JJ Leto and Paolo Barilla complete the qualifying top 26. Let's look at the people that haven't made the cut. Alex Caffey, Michele Alboreto, and sadly, David Brabham. And what a terrible day for the Footwork Arrows team.
Well, that's it for day 2. Day 3 features live, uninterrupted coverage of the race itself. Along with that, we'll be bringing you an exclusive interview with Gerhard Berger and one with triple world champion Sir Jack Brabham. So make a date to join us at 1 o'clock UK time, 2 o'clock in Central Europe for our build-up to the big race.
Von den German Open aus Hamburg.